Welcome back to the 103rd online episode of Peacetime, hosted on Sunday mornings in the name of Peace Point with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, coming to you today from DIMC in Azusa, California. In the previous session, we looked at the third episode of the Inner Peace Education series, called A Loving Relationship Toward the World. Today we'll continue on our way through the Inner Peace Education series, following a new format adapted for pre-recorded Sunday morning meditation sessions with an introduction to meditation, followed by 40 minutes of meditation, before finishing off with a wisdom talk on the fourth episode of the Inner Peace Education series, entitled Minimalism as Within, So Without. And last of all, some pre-recorded questions and answers. I estimate today's session will have an approximate runtime of 90 minutes. So let's start by making sure we're all on the same page about the recommended meditation technique. So let's spend a few moments backtracking over some of the basics before we sit for some meditation together. So some of you may be new to meditation today, and for that reason I'll go very briefly over some of the possible principles that you'll need as we meditate for about 40 minutes today. So often I like to show this slide to say that meditation works with a part of ourselves that is often neglected because it's invisible to us. Nonetheless, it's also something that is very important to our sense of subjective well-being, or how we feel about our lives. And this part of ourselves is called by various names. You might talk about it as being your awareness, or your focus of attention, or even your spirit. But within meditation, we normally just call it mind for short. It's not the same thing as our nervous system or our brain, but it's like the software that runs on our nervous system or our brain, which is the actual sense of awareness that we have. In an ideal world, the mind would be an integral part of who we are, and located in the same place as our body. But what tends to happen when we are inundated with distractions in our everyday life is it is pulled away from us, not surprisingly, to all those busy things in our lives, because we need to keep tabs on what's happening with all those other things. And the more things we have going on in our lives, then the more opportunity our mind has to be pulled outside us and to stay outside. Sometimes it stays away from us for so long that it's hard for it to find its way back again. So it's the job of meditation to try to put the pieces back together again, by bringing the awareness back inside ourselves within the space of the body. And if you want to be specific within this technique, we talk a lot about the center of the body as being a particularly efficient place to have the mind reunited with the body. Because there's a place down at our solar plexus which is particularly calm and peaceful, free of thought, and if we can build up familiarity with that place, then even when we are doing other things, we never lose our sense of mental balance inside of ourselves. So meditation aims to train the mind to spend more time at this inner place. So the idea is not to get too hung up on the precise position, but to emphasize a sense of comfort, of bringing the attention back to there. Even if it's not precisely that exact place, then somewhere in that general area will always be more calming for your mind than letting it continue to wander outside of yourself. Additionally, you may find it useful to supplement your technique with a few other little suggestions which are brought to us from our main teacher in Thailand. Often we find that having some sort of visual object in the mind is a good way to relocate the mind down to the center. So the way to bring your mind down to the center of your body, if you need something more tangible than a feeling, is to imagine a picture inside yourself. So you might like to think, for example, of a picture of the sun shining, but not in the sky, but in the center of yourself. And by maintaining that inner picture, then it also maintains the mind, the place you need it to be inside of yourself. Remember, when you are using this ability to picture things on the inside of yourself, to use your mind's eye and not your eyesight. Because some people make the mistake of trying to use their eyes to see within their body, which is sort of a physical impossibility. So when you are meditating, just let your eyes do their own thing, but use your internal vision as a way to relocate the mind. Also, with our eyesight, we would be disappointed if the images inside us were not clear. We would want to go and get a new pair of glasses or whatever. But with the inner vision, developed by our mind's eye, then even if it's not clear, then we should be content with it. And by contentment, then it becomes clear all on its own. If you don't see anything at all, it's also not a problem, but it may be that it is a feeling that will help you more than the actual picture. So you may feel the picture, as it were, without actually seeing it. And if there's really nothing at all, you can also use a mantra instead of a picture by hearing the repeated sound of words with a source that comes from the center of yourself. And suggestions for a mantra might be the words like Samma Arahang, which is traditional to our own technique. These two words mean a pure state of mind achieved in the proper way. But if you prefer a word more familiar to you, you can repeat a phrase from your own spiritual tradition, or maybe just a little affirmation like let it be and let it go. But the source of the sound will be at the center of yourself. And maybe I should add, you don't say the mantra out loud, because some beginners go Samma Arahang very loudly at the back of the class, and everyone turns around and looks at them. One last piece of advice, also from Thailand, is that although we don't use our physical eyesight, but the way we close our eyes is also quite influential, because it sets the tone for the rest of the meditation. So we can close our eyes very gently, maybe like halfway shut, rather than tightly shut, then it does set the tone for the rest of our meditation ahead. So generally with any meditation session, the first 5 minutes will be to do with getting comfortable in our meditation posture. You may notice that some people choose to sit on meditation mats, in which case it's ideal to sit cross-legged, generally with the right foot up on the calf of the left leg, if that's not too uncomfortable for you. If you don't happen to be a professional yoga practitioner, then maybe a looser variation of that would be more comfortable for you. But the important thing is for your legs and butt to form a sort of stable triangular tripod as you're sitting, so that you don't find yourself leaning too heavily on any particular part of your legs. Otherwise, you'll get uncomfortable. Even if you choose to sit on a chair, it's good to sit fairly straight and upright, because that helps you to find the center of your body more easily, and also to breathe more fully as well, in order to avoid sleepiness. Then after we've started meditation, we usually spend 5 minutes just going down through our body, checking all the muscles are relaxed. That's something known as a body scan. And then the second 5 minutes of any meditation is generally to do with getting our mind in a good place to meditate, freeing up some of the space in there to actually do a meditation practice by putting aside any unwanted worries or concerns that may be weighing on our mind, as it were. So, making that space in the mind and putting ourselves in a happy place whereby we reduce any worries on our mind. And only then do we do this exercise with focusing on an inner object down at our center and working with the mantra if we need to as well, in order to clear the thoughts from the mind. And I will say that for thoughts, if the thoughts are not at a very intense level, we can probably get away with just ignoring them. And they will tend to become less on their own until we can reach the point which we are aiming for in the meditation, which is just to have no more thoughts anymore. So an empty mind, our mind empty of thoughts at least. But if you do find that there are thoughts giving you a lot of trouble, then maybe just use the mantra to calm the thoughts down, at least in the beginning, which would be quite an effective strategy to deal with them. So far so good. So we'll sit for some meditation for about 40 minutes, and generally at the end of the meditation practice, we'll do what is known as loving kindness meditation, which is taking the inner experience we built up during our practice and allowing that to spread initially with the wish for our own benefit and happiness and freedom from suffering, and then extending it further beyond our body for the benefit of all living beings in ever-widening circles around us. So that is known as loving kindness meditation, which we will fit in towards the end of our practice. So if you are now sitting comfortably, we will proceed with some meditation now for the next 40 minutes or so. So now that we're a little bit more familiar with the meditation technique, let's settle ourselves for that 40 minutes of meditation. So if you'd like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now as you listen to my guidance. So we can start by bringing our attention back within our body, feeling the expansiveness, the healthy vitality that's naturally here within the body, allowing that to come to the fore, feeling stronger and stronger, as if our whole body is alive beneath the surface. Within that awareness, within that light, we scan our body and become aware of any tight or contracted areas. And when we focus our attention within the body and feel the vitality that comes to the fore, we'll become aware of at least one area of tightness, of resistance, of contraction. So we acknowledge the tightness while becoming aware of the vitality, the health around that area of contraction. We feel the expansion around it. And at this point, we can relinquish the tightness into a sense of vitality. We don't let ourselves get hung up on uncomfortable sensations, but feel the expansion around the tight, contracted area, feeling how it unravels the discomfort in that area, enveloping it, totally surrounding it, and feeling it as if it begins to dissolve the tightness and soothe the discomfort. We aren't doing anything special. We're simply acknowledging it, placing our attention on it and feeling it. It's like we are acknowledging that area of constriction, of discomfort, and in acknowledging it, we aren't opposing it anymore. And as the vitality, the expansion, permeates that tight area, it begins to unfold itself. And we can feel it expanding out, where simply accepting it is enough, and allowing it to unfold and expand. And we allow this to continue until all that is left is vitality, until that's all that remains. Now we can scan our body again and see if there are any secondary areas of constriction. Often when primary tension has been resolved, a secondary area will become apparent. It might be in our throat, our chest. It could be in our abdomen or our legs. Wherever it is, we find that secondary area of contraction and enfold it, envelop it in the vitality and the healthy expansion of the body awareness. We feel it. We feel the vitality, feel the contraction, and then how it has been permeated by the vitality. Feeling how the vitality grows stronger and stronger within that area as the tightness recedes. We feel the expansion within the body, the vitality within the body. And even as our heart continues to beat, our lungs continue to breathe, our eyes continue to see, our ears continue to hear, and our body continues to function in all these ways. We remain present in the stillness. In turning our attention to relaxation of our state of mind, we can take a natural intermission from the world outside, from its perpetual motion, by withdrawing the mind within the space of our body. Let's use what we have to awaken and deepen the presence within. We may feel it only fleetingly, but whatever it is, it's still enough. That vitality, that inner body awareness, which is the threshold of presence, This inner body awareness is our jump-off point for presence, and at the deepest part of it is stillness, because stillness is the key to success in meditation. So we just remain with this inner presence, just feeling the aliveness, just feeling the vitality. Presence can also be in the background of our awareness, like the sound of a stream bubbling in the background when we're out for a walk. We're aware of it, but it's in the background, so we can feel presence. We can dwell in presence, in stillness, in awareness, as if our inner awareness is moving in oneness with all things, because meditation is from moment to moment. It's being entirely here in the present moment, being in the now, and this place of beingness. There's no subject, there's no object. Subject and object are mere thought activity. Thought activity is limited to duality and remains superficial. Any time we are caught up in thoughts, we are trapped in a rough and ready approximation to reality. Thoughts are limited to win or lose scenarios. Whereas in meditation we transcend by simply being. We are here in the present moment. It is synonymous with a sense of presence or stillness. So in meditation we have stepped back, behind the thoughts, into a place of awareness, from where we can see things clearly, not from the thoughts, but as a part of a larger whole. We feel the expansion around the body, feel the vitality within the body. Now we feel the vitality within the body as it dissolves into the expansion, the space around us, where we can be everywhere in space, where we are the space, where we are the timeless, and even being in this place of the timeless presence of now, of stillness, the vitality is still there. So this is our invitation to let go of the old habits of polarity, to move beyond merely being a meditator or chasing an experience, and instead surrendering into this beingness. And there is a sacred pause between the in-breath and the out-breath, where the breath remains still for an instant between coming in and going out. And in this stillness between breaths lies a world of peace. It is where clarity can start to take root, and where the magic of simply being unfolds. It is a stillness we often overlook, but which holds so much potential for peace and serenity. It's a place at our diaphragm which is special, because it is the only place in the body where the thoughts can stop. It's a place where mind and body can come into balance. It is the center of wisdom in the body. This pause is a space where time seems to stop, in a moment of pure presence, free of expectation or action. Yet it's within this stillness that we can find clarity, calm and the quiet, wisdom of simply being, by bringing our attention to the space at the center of our body. So we embrace the spaces in between, specifically a place down around our solar plexus, with which we can gently connect by our sense of feeling, resting our awareness in stillness at that point, taking a sacred pause to allow the world to quieten down. It is a place of neutrality where we no longer need to strive for the next thing, nor fixate on what came before. Here we can release tension and connect with a deeper sense of self. In these pauses, we can find not just rest, but also renewal. If the feeling is not clear enough for us, we can conjure up a picture of something bright in the mind, maintaining that image down at our solar plexus in our mind's eye. And as for the possible problem of there being thoughts in the mind, if the thoughts are at a low level, then often we can just ignore those thoughts, treat them like unwanted guests, to the point that they will eventually die down into silence all by themselves, almost like guests that go away if you starve them of attention. However, if we're one of those people who tend to have a lot of thoughts going on in the mind, then it may be the case that you need to make use of that traditional mantra, the words Samma Arahang, or your own equivalent, not saying the words out loud, but hearing them, silently coming up from the center of your body, as if that were the source of the sound, leading the mind deeper at the center of the body, while at the same time freeing the mind of any extraneous thoughts, until the mind approximates closer and closer to silence within. So by the combination of centering and stilling the thoughts, we can awaken from the illusion created by distraction or mental activity, until we recover true presence. So we continue to sit for meditation now for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. We continue to feel ourselves in stillness, but moving through time. There's no need for us to move around. We don't have to change position. We simply feel ourselves in stillness, but moving through time. If our attention wanders, then we just bring it back to our center. If our inner object disappears, we can just conjure up a new one. And if it changes, then we can just follow it in its new form. There's no need for us to change it back again. Little by little, we'll find that our meditation is moving inextricably toward oneness. So we feel ourselves in stillness, but moving through time. And eventually that leaves us completely in the present moment. It's a feeling of being right here in the present moment. It's a feeling of being right here in the now. So we have moved from time into the timeless, right here in the present moment. We've brought ourselves into the timeless. Normally we would think of a gift being a present, and a present being a gift. And in a sense, we have a present waiting to be unwrapped inside us. But there is a second meaning of the word present. It is really important for our meditation, which is the present that is not the past and is not the future, but which is in the here and now. The present is actually the only time in our life that we have complete control over. So the key to the beginner's mind and benefiting from our present is learning to be content, keeping our mind in the present, enjoying things as they happen, focusing not on what's lacking, but on what we actually have within us, letting go of any hankering or anticipation, avoiding making comparisons with past meditations, accepting what we have right now, and not comparing with the past, allowing ourselves the gift of the present, and avoiding letting our mind get ahead of itself by anticipating future experiences. So the key thing here, other than being comfortable in body and in mind, is to be content. Even starting out from a small amount of relaxation, the amazing thing is, if we regard that small amount of relaxation as a gift, the gift will start to unwrap itself, allowing us to access something that's hidden inside. Small amount of relaxation, even though it may not be as spectacular as we might want, but if we're content in the present moment, and we simply accept it, it's the beginning of something miraculous. Because yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery. But the present is the greatest gift, and the gift is the present, and being content in the present moment is a great gift for meditation. So we continue to cultivate our mind in this way, lightly and gently in silence, until we come to time for some loving kindness meditation. So we continue to keep our mind on track at the center of the body, reminding ourselves that we can carry this peace within us, no matter what life brings. In the stillness that transcends the breath lies more than just a moment of rest. It is an invitation to reconnect with ourselves, to find peace amid life's constant flow. These sacred pauses remind us that life's beauty isn't always in its grand movements, but in its quiet, fleeting spaces. So we continue to engage with our sense of awareness. As long as we continue to maintain our sense of stillness, one sacred pause at a time, we'll start to have the possibility to extend the presence from our own center, initially with loving kindness toward ourselves, while bringing to mind the words, "May I be well and happy. May I be free from suffering." And extending the presence around ourselves like an aura or a halo, together with loving kindness, we can bring to mind the words, "May all beings be well and happy. May all beings be free from suffering." And we should remember that the words are merely pointers, and they point to the ineffable, a reference that are beyond the words, like the moon is beyond the finger that points it out. So not getting hung up on the words, but allowing them to lead us deeper into something more, to push back the frontiers of possibility, of potentiality, feeling the words in our body, rather than just hearing them. So this feeling, this unknown sense of presence, of stillness, is held within this place, bringing the balance, a correction, a change. It brings health and healing. This is the place of beingness that is without motive. It simply is. As we let go and move beyond the thinking mind, it fills us and all the sentient beings around us with radiance and a capacity for healing. Loving kindness originates from a deep inner realization of who we are, the vitality underneath the mundane experience, that essence that is already whole, perfect, and complete. It is from that essence that radiant health, that healing occur in ever-widening circles. So we continue to extend our loving kindness in this way for the last few moments of our practice together in silence. Sappha Buddhanuppavena, Sappha Dhammanuppavena, Sappha Sankhanuppavena, Sattha Bhavantu Te. We'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, and you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position before gradually finishing your practice. Well, over the last few sessions, I've been tacking together my lectures into a sequence of interrelated themes. I guess if I were to try to name the whole series, it might be called something like Inner Peace Education. In fact, what I've been doing is talking about the various different intelligences which we have as a human being, and maybe how meditation has some role, or at least some sort of perspective on how those various sorts of intelligence can be boosted or maximized through different aspects of our lives. And some of these intelligences may be familiar to you already, things like IQ, which would be to do with the intellect, or EQ, which would be more to do with the heart. And we even had BQ, or body intelligence, which would be more to do with our physical health. In previous sessions, I've talked about all of these intelligences as being connected with aspects of cultivation of the mind. We haven't touched directly on spiritual intelligence yet. I'll probably keep that for the next session, because they even recognize something known as SQ these days. However, before then, there are two sessions I'd like to devote to the conventional idea of intelligence, or IQ, starting this session to see what meditation has to contribute to making us a more intelligent person, or maybe using our intelligence in a more wholesome way. Really, it comes down to a question that I am often asked, especially after advocating things like non-attachment, where people understand that I expect them to let go of everything and their life will be happy. So they don't really see how you're supposed to let go of everything, including their job and their family, and still be happy. And they ask me if they've missed something somewhere. They ask if they are allowed to have any ambition in their life anymore, or whether that will just get in the way of their meditation results. So there is a sort of confusion between, okay, should you just let go, but maybe not quite of everything, perhaps hold back on a few bits, or how would I go about selecting the bits which are actually worth keeping? Because if you're not supposed to have any desires anymore, then why bother getting up in the morning? So I'd like to give some clarification on how you can let go of the useless stuff without letting go of your motivation. So the idea of entitling this session as minimalism indicates the ability to keep the bits which are truly important in the more ultimate sense of your life and really focus on these. All the rest you can safely regard as noise or things which you can let go of in order to allow you to focus on what is really important for you. And in this minimalism project, then there is a lot of advice that comes to us, of course, from spiritual sources, but also even from the business world, from those who would normally hold up as sort of paragons of intelligence. So there's a little story to start with of Albert Einstein going back to 1922 when he was attending a conference in Tokyo, and a bellboy came up to his room to deliver a telegram. And normally you give them a tip, but it turned out that Albert Einstein didn't have any small change on him. So instead he wrote a little note in German for, I guess, the Japanese boy, outlining his theory of happiness, which you can see there in translation that the calm and modest life brings more happiness than the constant pursuit of success, combined with constant restlessness. So there's an idea of happiness in there, but what Albert Einstein seems to be saying is that the more you are perturbed by the act of chasing the happiness, the less happiness you will find. In other words, not allowing the forces of money, fame, criticism, and judgment to distract you from walking a more noble path. Sometimes you may need to stand your ground while climbing higher and positively impacting more people in the world. And at the intersection of purpose and peace, for long you will find a deep, quiet, and tender voice of true happiness. So there is happiness to be had, but it cannot be achieved by obsession and cutthroat methods. Yeah. As for Leonardo da Vinci, he also said that simplicity is not to be sniffed at, but it is the ultimate sophistication. And to bring the advice more up to date with the words of motivational speaker Tony Gaskins, if you're always chasing the money, because the money should only be a means to other ends, right? Then you'll always be lacking. So you'll always be chasing something, or it'll never be enough. But What you should chase is purpose. Then that will attract the success that will lead you to true happiness, rather than trying to be a success without happiness in your purpose. So if you chase the purpose that makes you feel that you have meaning in life, or something that is really your dream, then the money will chase you instead. So it will follow you. That's what you focus on. Not to have no focus, but to be selective about what you focus on. So coming back to our little diagram here, IQ, the qualities of the intellect, mind in the light blue sector, often measures the qualities that we associate with going out and getting ourselves educated, for example, to increase our potential in the labor market, or learning more to earn more, as the slogan goes for many colleges, at least for Pasadena City College. So it would seem to be about using your conventional intelligence and your skill set, but the real operant quality is your passion, to really focus on the things that you're good at, right? So coming back to our little proverb, which we've been drawing on over the last few sessions, this little four-liner from the Dhammapada, we've ticked off health, we've looked at our trusted friends with the third line of the session, and this session we backtrack to the second line where it claims contentment is the ultimate wealth. So this is the 2,000-year-old wisdom that seems to be saying, if we are able to be more contented, actually we don't need to go out looking for more and more things to fill the gaps in our lives. So contentment is the greatest wealth. And to reach out to a slightly less Buddhist proverb, on this slide we have Epictetus, who I looked up and who apparently was an ancient Greek Stoic, claimed wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Well, I guess I should warn you that Stoics were generally not particularly cheerful people, but this is just to offer a bit of balance from two exclusively Buddhist ideas. Yeah. But from the point of view of combining perhaps simplicity with focus and real passion and success in your life, a good role model from the business world was probably Steve Jobs, who did a lot to combine the fusion of flower power in his day, enlightenment, meditating in the morning, auditing physics classes at Stanford during the day, and working nights at Atari, but with a dream of starting his own business. So a hard worker, right? But with time for meditation and also with an ambitious dream still unfulfilled. When he was young, he came across many obstacles in his life, but the thing that kept him going was what he was doing was something that he loved. So he did have passion. He didn't get up late in the morning or whatever, but he actually worked very hard, but still had time to fit in meditation with what he was passionate about and where he channeled his energy. As an illustration of the importance of ambition in overcoming obstacles, he famously said, "Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I love what I did." You've got to find what you love. So for a person who is renowned these days for the sort of designs which brought simplicity to quite sophisticated technology, making complex things simple to use or elegant in their simplicity, a lot of this came from the sort of person who could manage to combine these different values. And what he said about his life was that intuition to him was the most powerful thing, more powerful than the intellect. Interesting, eh? A spectacularly savvy, hard-working guy, but who insisted that his power to envision things was more important to him than the conventional intelligence. Another of the things Steve Jobs is remembered for was that he liked to advise us to stay hungry, but also to stay foolish. So not foolish in the sense of being like a complete fool or an ethically reckless person, but the sort of beginner's mind philosophy that he's always curious to find out more or to look outside the box of the established thinking. Staying hungry doesn't mean insatiable greed in terms of wealth, but in terms of always looking for new ways or opportunities to develop ideas further. So to go back to the Tony Gaskins quote, if you follow the passion side of things with your skillful ambitions, everything else will tend to take care of itself, as long as you stick with it and continue to put the energy in. The question becomes how to put the energy in a way that will actually lead to results. And from this point of view, there are certain recipes for success, which will help you to focus on what you're doing in a way that will tend to achieve results, whether it's in your business life, So the sort of things we would apply our conventional credentials and intelligence to, but interesting enough also for success in meditation. Interested? Not really. Should I change the subject? Oh, you are interested. So this is what the Buddha had to say on this matter. He taught there are four sets of things which are perfectly proclaimed by the Buddha, the fourfold path to success, otherwise known as the Iddhipata, and here a monk develops initial motivation, initial application, sustained application, and retrospective analysis. So this Sangiti Sutta is one part of the scriptures which has a whole lot of lists in it. And for any of you who are fans of the Sunday afternoon intermediate classes, so a set of four things that are like a recipe for success in applying energy intelligently to your passions or ambitions. So in this slide, I have rearranged the four in a nice neat table: initial motivation, initial application, sustained application, and retrospective analysis to show how they can be applied to life goals. So the first of the factors is initial motivation or willingness. For life goals, what this is really talking about is the passion which you bring to tasks in your life. We've already seen some of the proverbs emphasize the importance of passion. If you want to translate it into the language of business bestsellers, then you might call it something like focus. So here are a few more books which resonate with our sequence of recipe for success from the business world. So once you have that focus or passion, how do you follow through? So not just like gushing about the benefits of everything and then going back to bed. There needs to be the follow-through of applying the initial energy of motivation into hands-on engagement with the task. Sometimes the first step on the path is said to be the hardest, and you can imagine the amount of effort that goes into a business startup of some kind, all of work which you have to get in place to convince people that your idea is worth financing, to get all the permits, or to actually come away from the bank with their signature on the line or whatever. So it actually takes another sort of effort apart from your enthusiasm to go ahead and actually get a project moving forward. But then you have to keep things moving forward. So the sustained application is about keeping going in spite of any obstacles that you may come across along the way. Sometimes you need to pace yourself in order to remain resilient. And then in the end, you have to do something known as retrospective analysis, which means to stay foolish, stay hungry, in terms of going back and revising what you're doing in a way that hopefully will lead to even better results further down the line. So you need to go back and do your QC on what you've done so far, asking yourself if there's a better way that it can be done. For example, in the meditation room, we might try rearranging the seating to see whether perhaps we can make sure the maximum number of people can see the screens at the front. We don't know how well it worked out until we try, but we'll keep on trying until we have the right balance of chairs and meditation mats. Even for us, we can't afford to get complacent. We have to sort of keep it foolish, as it were, in order to find the best solution for everyone. When it comes to meditation, it turns out that the same set of principles can be used, but we call them by a different name. And sometimes they're known as the 5 C's. So you might have thought meditation is about sitting there and doing nothing, right? Well, in a way it is, but there is a method to it, okay? So there's a method to doing nothing. And the first thing in approaching meditation is that we need to have a conducive state of mind, which means some sort of motivational willingness to want to sit down in the first place. And you often notice that when you sit down to meditate and you feel like meditating, that day often it will go better. So some people, if they're not very smart, will just wait for the day when they feel like meditating. It turns out there's never a day when they feel like meditating. So they go back to bed every day. Yeah. So someone was telling me that they can't come to meditation classes because they have an appointment with their pillow on a Sunday morning. So they always come to the Thursday night instead. Well, it's funny, but obviously not a conducive state of mind early on a Sunday morning, for example. But if you realize you can conjure up or manufacture a state of willingness, if you're smart, you can always find ways to make yourself more enthusiastic about meditation. Instead of just waiting around for enthusiasm to happen on the off chance, you can actually set up the conditions. For example, some people like to have a shower first, and they feel refreshed, and then they feel more like meditating. So that would be considered smart, right? So you find something that is conducive to your practice. By doing more of it, then you'll be one step closer to success in your meditation. Secondly, once you've actually got yourself on your meditation mat, there are 2 C's under the heading of initial application. So we're talking about initial application of the mind. We take our mind, our focus of attention, and we place it somewhere, right? And depending on the way we put it or where we put it, it will lead to more or less success in our meditation. The diagram I often show in this connection is this one here, where the blue X represents the initial placing of the mind. But having put it there, you need to get the balance just right. And it's a balance between 2 things. The red line represents ease and the yellow line represents focus. So it's a balance that we have to achieve between keeping the mind in place, but at the same time being gentle about it. How gentle can we be in order to keep the mind in place, in order for the placement of the mind to be sustainable? Another way of putting it is it's like keeping 2 things in balance in order to make your way forward. The 2 rely on one another, but it's getting the balance right that allows it to make progress. So here, instead of ease and focus, in order to keep our C acronyms, we call them comfort and conscious. So 2 and 3 of the 5 C's. With these, we are able to get something going which is sustainable. And if it's sustainable, then it corresponds with the 4th C, which is consistent, allowing us to sustain. And you'll notice that the longer you can sustain that balanced feeling of being in the flow of the meditation or maintaining yourself at that sweet spot in your meditation, the longer it goes on, the further you travel towards your goal. And admittedly, sometimes it takes a lot of skill to keep your equilibrium. It's rather like riding a unicycle or something. The better you are at it, the further you can go and the deeper you can get in your meditation. If you do happen to sort of fall off balance, it's not a problem. You just start again. You can do a proverbial reset in your meditation, but it's not like going back to square one. You will find yourself further along the path than when you started out last time round. And last but not least, we need to come back and check over how our meditation has gone, to ask ourselves whether there might have been a better approach to doing this. Did taking the shower first really help put me in the mood for meditation, or would a little bit of stretching beforehand help even more? Or would adjusting my meditation cushion be something that would help me to sit a little bit longer? Or is it down to the temperature in the room? Or is it down to the fact that I've got the lights on when I could meditate in the dark with less distractions, for example? So, going back over your practice and reflecting whether there is a better way of doing the same thing. And for every person, interesting enough, we are not all the same, so different things will work for different people in meditation. So it's down to each of us to discover what works for us in our meditation. I can give you a generic idea of the best way to meditate. Now do this, now do that. Think of the sun shining. Imagine it at your center. Feel comfortable with it. But some people follow all the generic instructions and they still don't feel comfortable. So then it becomes a question of what each meditator can do to adapt the practice to make it their own. Part of this is checking back over your meditation practice to adapt the practice to your own needs in a way that will work better for you next time round, and with increasing reliability as time goes on. So this is about how minimalism can help us to focus on what matters in the task that we're doing. Sometimes the second step, in other words, the balance between comfort and consciousness, has been summarized as yet another C, which is contentment. Just as this sort of contentment is specific to finding work-life balance in the business world, it has even more importance for success in meditation. But it's a contentment where, if you find yourself in the right place in your meditation, then, in the words of our teacher in Thailand, the mind that wants for nothing shall receive everything. So, not that the mind that wants for nothing will get nothing, but the mind that wants for nothing more, that's when you get the whole shebang. Because if we are always discontented with the situation around us or with our meditation practice, supposing in the summer, I wish it were colder, and in the winter, I wish it were warmer, and in the spring, I'm not sure what I wish for. So it's probably better just to wish I was happy instead. To give an example, this contentment associated with focusing on the present moment in our meditation, where you're not thinking, but last time it was better, or you're not thinking about how much better it could be. It's down to being in the present moment, or seeing the present as a gift. So the present is a gift, and the gift is a present, but actually being in the present moment is also a gift for meditation. In the famous words of Kung Fu Panda, Master Ogway, does this make any sense to anyone? I don't know. I heard Kung Fu Panda is famous and has several movies. Yeah, well, you can tell me about it later, but I have it on good authority that Master Ogway said that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but that today is a gift, and that is why we call it the present. And apparently they even have this product now on Amazon where you stay in the present moment by having this clock where every time you look at the time on the clock, it's now. Yeah, apparently they have a market for these things, but to save yourself $20 plus postage, you can just take the knowledge it teaches you. Yes, so the sort of letting go that we do need to do is letting go of the past and the future to be much more in the present moment. This is particularly true of meditation. What we're doing in effect is to let go because, especially for meditation, if we can't let go of the past or the future, then it tends to put us in an untenable situation. In fact, it's something that we can let go of if we choose to, but often we don't exercise our choice. And in this respect, there is sometimes a little metaphor which is used of the monkey trap. Do you know how to trap a monkey? Because monkeys are pretty smart, right? They're not like as smart as us, but, well, for the most part anyway. But apparently, if you put a banana in a hollow gourd, shown in the slide, where the neck of the gourd is wide enough for the monkey to put their hand in, but once it makes a fist to grab the banana which is hidden in the gourd, it cannot get its hand back out again. Really, all it needs to do in order to escape is to let go of the banana and it will be free. Because it wants the banana so much, it just waits there for the hunter to come back. Yeah, it's really sad. And we laugh, haha, at the stupid monkey and ask, how could it be so stupid? But in fact, we ourselves do exactly the same thing with lots of things which are painful in our lives, where we think that we are getting our own back somehow on someone who's made us angry by being grumpy the whole time. But it's rather like drinking poison and hoping someone else is going to die from the poison. So we get grumpy, hoping it's going to remind the other person who made us angry to feel bad about their behavior. But it turns out that the grumpiness just sort of gives us stomach ulcers. Yeah, so we may laugh at the monkey, but often we are not much smarter. But our equivalent to the banana that we find it hard to let go of is often more like negative states of mind. So, fortunately for us, the meditation does help us to value the present more and to gain the ability to let go of things which would otherwise blur our focus, especially the things that obstruct our life goals. Often the sense of happiness gained is not something that requires a great deal of effort. The only effort required is not letting ourselves get entangled in all the other things which are not that happiness. Yeah, so leaving the past behind is one thing obviously we can do. So on not obsessing about the future, again, Einstein famously said that he doesn't think of the future too much. The ironic for someone who impacted the future so much, but he said it comes soon enough. Yeah, so we might protest. Well, it's our duty to worry about these things, right? Because we have all these problems in our lives, and how can we not worry about them? We have to worry about them for them to go away. But it turns out that if you create a flowchart for decision making and you ask yourself, do you have a problem in your life? If the answer is no, then why worry? Because you have nothing in your life to worry about. Or if the answer is not no, do you have a problem in your life? And the answer is yes. The next question you have to ask yourself is, can you do something about it? Sometimes the answer might be yes, in which case you can just get down to doing something about it. So why waste time worrying about it? Go ahead and fix it. Or if the answer to the question, can you do something about it, is no, then you cannot do something about the problem, in which case, why worry about it? Because you can't do anything about it anyway. So in the end, all the solutions to do you have a problem in your life end up as being why worry about it? So it doesn't mean that you just let your roof stay leaky, but it does mean that you have, logically speaking, a lot less things which really justify you spending your whole time worrying. but especially coming back to our qualities of mind. Often children are very lucky because they tend to be much more in the present moment. They can laugh and be happy without thinking too much about responsibilities or their past. And this is something which we can bring into our meditation too if we are smart. In the end, what we are looking for is not a mind that is completely empty, but a mind that we have simplified down. And it's a question of whether we want to be mindful or mindful. In this particular cartoon, I think the dog is the smarter of the two. Yeah, the dog sees the world for what it is and is probably much happier, whereas the poor owner is thinking about all the next things they're going to do and all the things which they're worrying about in their life, which are causing them grief. Yeah, probably not very happy, although, of course, they think that they are a lot more intelligent. Yeah, the dog is just a dumb critter. And finishing off with a quick Marie Kondo quote, because you can't talk about minimalism without mentioning Marie Kondo these days, although I did hear that apparently she has a messy house now. Yeah, she gave in eventually to some mess in her house. I think it was after the third child. Yeah, I think she probably realized it's just too much to have a tidy house with 3 toddlers running around it. So, she is better known for saying that putting your things in order is also a way to put your past in order as well. So it's a little bit of a message for quality of life there, going beyond mere contentment in the mind itself, as even the way we engage with our surroundings can help to clarify our life, so that we can have the space to think clearly about what is important for us and what we would like to focus on given the choice in the matter. And just to talk briefly about minimalism writ large, if we were to return to the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, where we have been looking for potential qualities developed on a personal level that have the power to use our IQ in conjunction with material minimalism. I think the problems to do with minimalism, as within so without, that have particular relevance to at least 5 of the SDG challenges, which would be number 1 on no poverty, number 2 on zero hunger, number 7 on affordable and clean energy, number 8 on decent work and economic growth, and number 9 on industry, innovation and infrastructure. Yeah. So at this point, I would like to open up the floor for any questions, comments, or feedback, which, owing to the format, are questions that were sent in advance. So the first question comes from Misty of Yorba Linda. Here comes the question. I was curious, while I don't want to get too much into thinking, especially during meditation, but maybe after meditation when we do the last C of checking and kind of a review of everything, what are some of the things that we can check, maybe some questions we can ask ourselves specifically about our meditation so that we can track it consistently? Hi, Misty, and thank you for your question. So I think the first thing to emphasize about the checking part, or the retrospective analysis of our meditation, as you rightly say, is that you don't do it during the meditation itself. It's something that you only do once you finish your meditation. Only then should you sit down to reflect on your practice. And that would be the best time to do it. So instead of sitting there meditating and thinking, wouldn't this be going better? Would not be the way of doing it. But some examples of 3 questions that you could use to good effect to evaluate your practice in a way that would lead you to look for better ways to improve, which you would use after the practice. Firstly, might be, how did I go about placing my attention in my meditation today? So what technique did I actually use there? And as I mentioned, every person has a slightly different approach to this. So it's good to become aware of what you've been doing, or maybe whether you have even thought about that. Let's say you've been very careful in the way you've closed your eyes today. So I closed my eyes only after I had relaxed myself completely, not closed my eyes and then tried to relax myself, but I relaxed myself and then closed my eyes. That might be something that had a bearing on my meditation outcome today. So you quickly write that down to remind yourself for the next time you meditate. A second question for retrospective analysis might be, as a result of that way I placed my mind today, what was the outcome? So what happened as a result of the way you placed your mind in that way? And just for your information, I generally go for the best of your meditation rather than getting too critical about bad bits or failures. You go for the parts where you felt that Yeah, my meditation actually worked for me in a good way today. So you'd write down a few notes about that. And the third question for a retrospective analysis might be what seemed to go better today than in my previous meditations. So what seems to have been an improvement in my meditation today? And of course that allows you to put your finger on what actually was the thing that caused the improvement. So we're not focused 100% on results, but just like the entrepreneurs are not focused 100% on the money, but they're focused on their passion. So in the same way, we are not focused so much on the results as on the things that brought us to the results. So we're more interested in the techniques we have used, which seem to have worked well for us, which comes down to every person finding personally what works for them. So meditation progress is not something I can really give you off-the-peg solutions for, but it's something where you have to adapt advice for yourself by regular retrospective analysis. So you try things and then you adjust them. The next question was sent in by Siddhant of Claremont. So here comes the question. In the diagram which showed the balance between effort and ease and focus, I was wondering what the pre-empting hindrance meant. Hi Siddhant, and thank you for your question. So once you become more experienced in meditation, you start to realize what a good experience in meditation actually means for you. At that point, you'll start to want more of the same. So if you're not careful, sometimes what happens with people is they try to get back to that good experience that they had last time they meditated. For some people, there's a sense of tension building up where you're inadvertently trying to get back to what it was before, even if you're not fully aware of it yourself. It is a sort of grasping after experiences where you want more of the same. Unfortunately, quite often in real-world meditation, your next step of progress in the meditation might actually be qualitatively different from what you considered progress the last time round. So if you just crave more of the same, actually is holding you back from the real progress. So avoiding the tendency to preempt experiences is something which is important to do. So if you find yourself preempting, you would need to go back to your inner child or your beginner's mind or keep it foolish in order to basically trick yourself into not caring too much, even on a subconscious level, about what happens in your meditation, and preferably not being interested at all in having any progress whatsoever, so that when you want for nothing, then you will have everything. Yes. So it's almost like you have to trick the mind back into wanting nothing so that it actually opens up to real progress coming to you in an unpredictable way. Because progress is not something you can predict. It's something that comes to you in a much more passive way. So in effect, it comes to you through the balance you have sustained. Yeah. So if you find yourself preempting, then doing a reset on your practice by any of the methods I mentioned will be something that would help you. Our third question today comes from Alan of Irvine. So here comes the question. When we are on the subject of inner experiences, I suppose in technical language this might be called a jhana. Suppose you feel like you're having certain experiences that are quite overwhelming, like as far as your inner sensations go, how can you keep the point of stillness without focusing on it or grasping onto it? Are we just supposed to let it happen or try not to notice it? What's the best course of action if we reach this point? Hi, Alan, and thank you for your question. So, just for those who might not realize, the word jhana is translated in English as absorptions, and it is seen as actually attaining some sort of meditational state as opposed to merely practicing meditation, which is what we spend most of our time doing, which is where we're trying to get to that point, where we truly have a meditation experience. Yeah. So, practice, and then eventually we reach a meditation experience which sort of arises within us, or we go into a meditation which would be called jhana or an absorption. These are preliminary states of attainment in meditation, and they're called absorptions because it's like your mind becomes absorbed onto something. It's like subject and object become one and the same, as if there's some sort of a unity attained in your meditation. It's like you become the object which you have previously just been focusing on. So generally this doesn't happen instantly. It's not sort of like wham bam and you find yourself in some sort of meditation experience before you realize it. more often is a sense of gradually being drawn into that absorption. And once you start to recognize that this is what's going on here, then of course you start preempting with thoughts like, oh, it's getting good now, my meditation. And you start to get really excited, at which point you start thinking about it, which of course will cause you to fall by the wayside, or your mind becomes clouded again. And you don't actually ever get there because every time you think it's about to happen, then you get overly excited about it. So little by little, you need to train yourself to get used to, okay, so this is the sort of thing that's promising here, but you'll continue to play hard to get and not let yourself get overly interested in this. So you're just going to keep your mind on an even keel while allowing it to run to completion without interfering in the process. So sometimes it takes a little bit of equanimity. Sometimes the onset happens so fast that you don't get a chance even to preempt it. But generally, once you become more experienced, it is something that gradually dawns on you or comes upon you, in which case you just allow it to do that. So as long as you feel that you're in control and you don't need to impose yourself on it, then you can just play it cool. So for our fourth question today comes from Solana of Alhambra. Here comes the question. When it comes to tidying the room and cleanliness, which seem to be part and parcel of the minimalism which you're recommending today, keeping stuff clean and so on, I want to ask, at what point does this become a sign of obsessive compulsive disorder? And I suppose the same question would apply to any pursuit of excellence or perfectionism. Hi Solana, and thanks for your question. I think you have to ask yourself whether cleanliness and orderliness is having a narrowing effect on your practice or a liberating effect. On the surface, I guess it does appear quite obsessive if you're going to spend all your time lining up your ornaments in a row, or as Marie Kondo does, a lot of sock folding and stuff. She makes sure that the socks are aligned in the same direction in her drawers and that sort of thing. Some people might say she's suffering from OCD or whatever. I guess it comes down to you personally as to whether having everything neatly arranged leaves you with a clearer mind, or whether it leaves you obsessing about, oh no, there's a sock I missed out there, or that one's sticking up a bit, in which case you would likely drive yourself even more crazy than before. So I think the idea is maybe to do as much of it as actually leaves you feeling calmer, or leaves you feeling freer of your past, or reduces the amount of things to worry about in your life. In my student days, the flat next door was shared by a Che Guevara communist guy who had no personal possessions whatsoever. And you'd think that would be really good, because he'd be like Marie Kondo, right? But it turns out that this was not the case, because he was always asking to borrow stuff from everyone else. So being around him was a complete pain, because he was always borrowing stuff when you needed it, and all because he claimed the moral high ground of not owning anything and letting stuff belong to the community. So instead of freedom from worry for everyone else around him, it was an annoyance. Yes, so I guess, even with Marie Kondo herself, after her third kid, she decided to have some mess rather than trying to police the whole house to be clean and tidy the whole time. I think this is why even Marie Kondo used the criteria for possessions that you ought to engage with them on a level where they spark joy. Yeah. And there's also one last question from Solana where she said she was pleasantly surprised that I brought up the subject of Stoicism. Her comment was as follows. I know from philosophy that many of the principles of Buddhism and Stoicism overlap. I wonder if you could say more about how connected these two schools of teaching might be. Hello again, Solana. I think probably Stoics in ancient Greece probably got a lot of their ideas from Buddhism, historically speaking. Despite our assumptions, contemporary ancient cultures did talk to each other and influence one another over intercontinental distances in those days. Surprisingly enough, even without modern communications, they did travel long distances on the Silk Road and learn from one another. Aspects of their philosophies have some shared foundations, but compared to the Buddhists, I think the Stoics probably were not very cheerful in their outlook. Often they had a tendency to patience and inaction for situations that were not to their liking. They would just put up with the pain, the sorrow, and the grief. By comparison, the Buddhists would probably be more proactive in trying to overcome unpleasant situations with compassion and that sort of thing, whereas Stoics would just be sort of grumpy. Yeah. So I think Stoics were probably just grumpy versions of Buddhists. For a future session, I did get together a lot of Stoic quotes that align quite strongly with Buddhism, but I think that would likely be a whole standalone talk. So I guess I've said everything I want to for today, apart from a quick mention of upcoming activities in person and online for Peace Point meditation. If you're new to meditation today and found it beneficial, then I would encourage you, instead of this being just a one-off, to try to incorporate meditation into your daily routine, starting with 20 minutes of meditation at a time of the day which for you has a good energy and when you are not going to be interrupted by other tasks. Maybe first thing in the morning to get a good start to your day, maybe last thing at night if you're having problems sleeping, or even during your lunch break if you have a stressful job. Once you start to build a short meditation into your daily routine, you may find you have good days and bad days. But if you can start out with 20 minutes every day, then little by little it will become easier and you'll be able to go further in the time available, until you will have the inclination to want to increase the time of meditation for yourself as you improve. If you are still hazy about the meditation technique, we have an app for that called MindGem, which you can download for free onto your cell phone. And when I say free, I mean don't let anyone charge you money for that. At last count, MindGem had more than 200 audio tracks on it, which you can follow along with as you meditate with different English-speaking teachers from our lineage, and it even works offline. The tracks are of different lengths and include different ways into the center of the body for you to experiment with. And it also has a timer, which is quite handy for keeping track of your meditation time. If you're left with questions as a result of your meditation and you want to get advice, or if you just want to have some company while meditating, we run regular classes at DIMC Azusa throughout the year, every Thursday evening between 7 and 8 p.m. in the Luo Ballroom of the main building here in Azusa, and every Sunday morning in the main chapel between 9 and 11 a.m. So today we've been looking at Inner Peace Education Session 4 on Minimalism as Within, So Without. For my next pre-recorded session online, which will, fingers crossed, be next month, I'll move on to the 5th session of the Inner Peace Education series on spiritual intelligence. So, for good measure, I'd like to remind viewers to keep the questions coming in about meditation or topics that you've learned in the lecture to the email address that you can see spelled out in the slide, and I'll do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to avoid recklessness or complacency, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Hopefully, as a result of today's session, you will manage to use your conventional intelligence to have liberating attitudes to acquisition of material wealth or a spiritual attainment in your life. So that's all for today. Thanks for viewing. So long, folks, and stay safe.